Well, to discuss that further, we're now joined by Mr. Mark Glenn, who is a political commentator, and he's joining us live now via Skype from Idaho. Mr. Glenn, essentially Syria pointing out what many of us have known for many years now, but why is it that after so many years of a seemingly failed policy, these three countries continue supporting militancy?
Well, it's not a failed policy at all. The Saudis, the Qataris, the Turks, of course, working as the front men for Israel and the United States, have almost completely achieved exactly what they have set out to do, which is the destruction of Syria. So it's only a failed policy if we choose to employ diplomatic language and give these players a benefit of the doubt that they certainly do not deserve to have. No, they have basically achieved what they've done. The only thing missing, obviously, is that the Assad regime has not been removed. But as far as the destruction of Syria and the demoralization of the people there, certainly this is not a failed policy at all. It's been completely successful for them.
Okay, so then considering the destruction of Syria, as you said, is occurring, why hasn't the United Nations acted?
Well, because the United Nations is basically just a face. It is a functionary there to further Western imperialist and Zionist ambitions. Let's keep in mind that 20 years ago or more, 25 years ago, the United Nations, moved immediately with the whole business of Saddam Hussein and the invasion of Kuwait, and it didn't take any time at all whatsoever to see actual tangible results come from the various resolutions that were passed, and of course the subsequent destruction of Iraq. And this was followed up some 20 years or 10 years afterwards, when George W. Bush took over and finished what his father had begun with the destruction of Iraq. And so the United Nations is basically there to give the illusion that there is a voice for all of the nations of the world, that there's a forum where all nations can participate and can see results that are geared towards justice and for peace take place. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that the United Nations is basically just a functionary for Western and for Zionist ambitions.
Okay, so let's talk about those ambitions then, because we just heard Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah conclude his speech. He's the Secretary General of Hezbollah, and he strongly, of course, said that the movement would stand by Syria, obviously, because it is part of the axis of resistance. So what kind of an obstacle do Hezbollah, Russia, Iran pose for these ambitions?
A huge obstacle, not the least of which is the fact that you have very powerful players such as Russia that are armed with nuclear weapons and who can project force, where other countries are somewhat limited. And I think that really this is the model. It's not just the failure of the United Nations to live up to what its outward veneer tries to portray itself as being, but really the necessity of countries all around the world, people of goodwill, to form their own alliances and to not jump into bed with these Western and Zionist institutions that are not dedicated towards peace or the resolution of conflict. The Russians, the Syrians, the Iranians, and Hezbollah understood that they cannot win this very desperate battle, and not just for the region, but really for the soul of humanity, if they wait around for the West to decide to do the right thing. People of goodwill have to band together, and they have to do what needs to be done and let the consequences run their course. But in the end, what counts is standing up and doing the right thing, which obviously Hezbollah and the axis of resistance are doing.
Okay, we'll leave it there at that point. But as always, Mr. Glenn, we of course appreciate your insight. That was Mark Glenn, who was speaking to us live from Idaho.